Hi everyone, this is Jared from Gertrude, and in this video I'm going to try to show you an exhaustive overview of getting completely started with the Gertrude app, including how to set up users and get it installed on your kid's computer, and go over all the core functionality and kind of give examples of all the types of tasks you'll be doing with Gertrude. So this video will be a little bit long. If you want a short just kind of demo of what Gertrude gives you, or if you're just looking for a faster overview, then check out one of our other videos. But if you'd like to see a step-by-step walkthrough of literally every part of getting up and running, then this is for you. A quick note on what you're seeing on the screen here. Using the Gertrude app involves kind of two parties, your kid who's being protected and you, the parent, who's doing the protecting. And so kind of to show you both parts at once, what I've done is divided my screen. And on the left side over here, I've just got a web browser open. This is going to represent you as the parent and the things that you do. And I've just got this open in a web browser, but you can think of this as like any device you have. The thing about Gertrude is that the parent can use a computer, an iPhone, an Android, a Windows computer, a Chromebook, anything. Basically, as long as the parent has access to the internet and a web browser, they can do all the tasks that they need to do on an ongoing basis for Gertrude. Stuff like opening up websites, approving requests, reviewing activity, etc. But the child who's being protected is always on a Mac computer. So Gertrude works specifically and only for Mac computers as far as protecting kids, but the parent who is controlling and supervising the protected kid can use any sort of device they want. So this right side of my screen where I've got the video of a Mac computer, this is your kid's computer, and the left side, this is kind of you working on your phone or on your own computer, something like that. All right, well, the first thing you need to do is log in to the Gertrude parent web admin dashboard. And so the only thing I'm not showing you here is actually just how to sign up for an account. But all you have to do there is click sign up, and it'll kind of walk you through the steps necessary. But once you've done that and verified your email address, then you can just click log in and you'll find yourself here in the Gertrude parent web admin dashboard, and it gives you a few recommendations of what to do. And the first thing we're going to do is create a user, so we'll go ahead and click this. Now, a user in Gertrude is essentially one of your kids, so you almost always want to give this the name of one of your kids. So let's say I have a daughter named Susie. I would type her name in here, and in this section called monitoring, we're going to go ahead and enable key logging and screenshots. This will make more sense in a few minutes when I show you kind of what you get from turning on these features. But essentially, key logging is what it sounds like. It causes the Gertrude app to capture every single thing your children type and upload it so that you can review it later. And the next one is enabling screenshots, which is very similar, except for it takes pictures of the screen of your kid's computer and uploads it so you can watch over what they're doing, and for an extra layer of accountability and safety. So we're going to turn both of these on. For the sake of the video, I might turn this frequency down to say maybe 30 seconds, and we'll just go ahead and click save. And now we have our first user. Now, there's not a ton we can do with a user until we get the Gertrude Mac app itself installed on a Mac computer and then connect it. And so that's what I'm going to show you next. So we'll switch over here to our kid's computer. And in order to get started, we are going to pull up a web browser and we're going to go to the Gertrude website. And if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, we can click the download button, and it'll go ahead and start downloading a copy of the app. So I'll close this window out and then find where it downloaded. And if you open this, all you need to do is drag the icon into the applications folder like you've probably done with some other apps you've installed. I'm going to authenticate, and then you should see the Gertrude app as available to launch. Before we launch it, I want to just make a really important brief point about how Gertrude works. In order for Gertrude to be safe for your kid to use, you will need to have them on a macOS user or account that is not an administrator. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, that's totally fine. I'll explain what I mean. You just need to go up here to the Apple menu and go to System Settings, or in older versions it's called System Preferences. And if you search for Users and Groups, then you'll see the users that exist on this Mac. And by default, when you just boot up your Mac for the first time, it gives you a user that has admin privileges, like this one, Jared. It says admin underneath it. And for a ton of people, they never create another user and never even realize that you can create another user. And if that's you, that's totally fine. But you'll just have to do one extra step, which is you'll need to come in here and click Add an Account and make a special account for your kid that is of type standard, not admin. So you can see this Susie user right here as a standard user. And the core difference between an admin and a standard user is that an admin has all powers on the system, which means they can install programs, change every preference, delete programs, etc. And so we can't have your kid have an admin account, because then they could just remove the Gertrude app and that would defeat the purpose and not be safe. So I'll show you in a moment that Gertrude actually checks to help make sure that you've got the correct type of account, and it'll warn you if you are on the wrong account. But I've already got myself logged in as a user named Susie, who is not an admin, so I can proceed to the next step, which is launching the Gertrude app for the first time. So we'll just go to Applications, and I'm going to double click the Gertrude app, and it's going to ask me if I'm sure I want to open it, and there's a little dialogue about checking for updates. You might see one or more little pop-ups like that, normal things from the macOS operating system. But once you're done, there's no visible change, no big window launches, and that's because Gertrude's a little different from common applications on your Mac computer. It's not really meant to be used like something like a web browser or a word processor. It's more of a background utility that kind of does its job silently and kind of gets out of your way, and when you need to interact with it, you can find it, but it tries not to take up a lot of space. So by default, all it shows you is a little icon in the menu bar, and I'm pointing to it right here up at the top of the screen. Hopefully you can see that. And if we click this icon for the first time, all we're going to see is this Connect to User option. And that's because Gertrude was designed very specifically for parents to be able to control it remotely from their own phone or computer and do everything from their own device, and not to need the Mac computer that their kid is using at the time. So in order for this to work, we need to create a one-time connection between this Mac computer and the user that we're creating over here on the left as a parent. So the way to do that is here back on your parent's device is you click the Add Device, and the Gertrude web app will pop up a connection code. And this is what we need over here. We're going to click Connect to User, and I'm going to enter this in. And click Connect. And once that's complete, you'll get a little success message. And if you click this More Options button, it'll immediately take you to what we call the health check screen. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but the essence of it is that this is a screen that's just kind of Gertrude, the app, sort of kicking its own tires and helping you understand if everything's configured correctly, and it's also a place you can go if you're having any problems. When you first install it, you'll probably see a mixture of things that look right and some other things that need attention, sort of like what I'm seeing right here. A few of these orange ones are because we don't have the internet filter actually turned on. I'm going to show you that in a moment. But this red one that says notification settings is something we can go ahead and fix right now. And this is just Gertrude telling you that you need to grant permissions for Gertrude to send notifications to your kid. It's pretty important that you have these turned on because the notifications that Gertrude sends are important. They're things like when your kid requests to have a new website opened up and you respond to them, they need to be able to see that. So if you click this, if your screen looks like that and you click this, you can just go to Gertrude and make sure that notifications are allowed. And we really recommend you switch it to the alert style. That just makes it so your kid hopefully can't miss it if you do something that triggers a notification. So once we've done this, I can click recheck and that'll turn green. And we will just deal with these oranges by going through the process of installing the internet filter. And that's what we'll do next. So I'll close this screen out. The way to install the internet filter is to come back up to this menu bar icon, and you'll see now it gives us a bunch more options now that we've made that one-time connection. And it's also telling us that the internet filter is not running right now, and we can start the process of turning it on by clicking this button right here. Before I do that, I want to mention that it's going to walk us through a couple steps that are a little bit weird, but no worries. This only has to be done one time, the steps you're about to see. The issue here is that Gertrude is doing something very fundamental with your computer. It is getting access to every single internet request that every single app on your computer makes. And so the people at Apple just want to make sure that no program can do this without your consent and your knowledge. So they sort of one time force you to jump through a handful of hoops and give permission very explicitly to do this. So that's what you need to do. And it's just a matter of, checking a few boxes, which I will walk you through here. So we will click turn on, and the first thing we have to do is kind of get through this pop-up, and it's saying, hey, this application is trying to load something new, and by default it's going to block it, but we don't want it to block, so we're going to click open system settings, and then we're going to look for this little area of text that says software from Gertrude was blocked from loading, and we need to click this allow button. So once we've clicked that, we're going to have to authenticate with the username and password of an admin user, because again, standard users like my Susie user is not allowed to do this. So we'll do that. And once we've authenticated correctly, we get the final warning, which is, here, I'll dismiss this, which is this notification saying that Gertrude the app is trying to filter network content, which by default, it's like prompting you to dismiss it, but we actually want this. This is the whole purpose of the Gertrude app. So go ahead and click allow, and then the internet filter is running. We can see this if we go back to the Gertrude dropdown, and you'll see now this time the internet filter is on. And in fact, we can take it for a spin by just pulling up any browser, and let's try to go somewhere, and you'll see, oh, can't go to Yahoo. Let's try Wikipedia. Nope. And none of these will work, and that's because by default Gertrude blocks the entire internet. You actually have to open up parts of it that you want to permit your kid to have access to. And that's kind of one of the fundamental features of Gertrude, is that instead of trying to block the bad parts of the internet, we've sort of understood that that's a losing game. It's impossible. You cannot ever keep up to date with what parts of the internet are bad. You have to flip that on its head and reverse it and block the entire internet and then open up the parts that you know are safe for your kid. So that's why literally nothing is working right now. So we can take care of that and address that, because your kid is going to need access to some parts of the internet at least, and we'll begin kind of showing you how to take care of that. Before I do that, I want to show you how to get back to that administration menu. These three options right here we'll go over shortly. Those are ones for your kid to use on a somewhat regular basis. This fourth option right here, administrate, is just for you as the parent. If you click it, you'll notice you have to put in the username and password of an admin user on the system, and this is how we kind of make sure your kids can't get in here. And now that we've got this running, everything looks good. Okay, so the next thing we're going to work on is showing you how to get parts of the internet unblocked for your kid. Right now they can't get anywhere, which is very safe, but probably is not what they need to kind of get their homework done, their schoolwork, and other things like that. So in order to grant access to the internet, your kid needs what we call a keychain. We call it a keychain because we use this metaphor basically that the entire internet is locked up, it's blocked. And it's blocked by default, so we need keys to open up parts of the internet. And we group keys. A key is like a little setting that will unblock one website or something like that for your kid. And because it's really useful to group these into keys so that you can share them and reuse them, we put keys into keychains. And so the way to open up internet access is to make sure that your kids have at least one keychain. So I'll show you kind of a couple ways of dealing with keychains, and I'll walk through some of the common workflows that you'll be doing with your kid. Maybe one of the easiest ways to get started is just to use what we call a public keychain. And the way you do that is you click the Add Keychain button on your user. It's going to tell you up top here that you have no personal keychains. This just means that you haven't created any custom sets of keys for your own kid, and that's because I'm kind of showing you from scratch here. I literally haven't done that yet. But that's okay because you have access to a large list of what are called public keychains that Gertrude makes available for you. These are sort of pre-configured lists of websites that you might be interested in unblocking. And this list will be growing over time in order to kind of give you a fast pathway to opening up lots of common sites you might need. So to show you how this works, I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to select the public keychain for Khan Academy. And we'll pretend that our user Susie needs to use Khan Academy for school. So we'll just select this keychain and scroll down and click Add. And we'll save the user. And at this point, if we come back to our kids' computer, they should have access already to Khan Academy. So I'm gonna, as long as I can spell the web address, Khan Academy, and sure enough, it opened up. Now, you may have noticed that when we added the keychain over on the left side, we didn't have to do anything on your kid's computer for them to have access to Khan Academy. And that's because of that connection we created a few minutes ago. Our system is able to basically send updates of the protection rules straight to your computer with no need for them to kind of do anything to get those new rules. It should just work automatically, like I showed you here. However, occasionally, if that update doesn't seem to be coming through, there is a button we give your user, which is this refresh rules button they can click. And essentially, this is just the ability to manually have the user say, hey, did my parent give me anything new? Is there any new information or rules that I can kind of pull down? And if you're having trouble, sometimes you can just click this and it occasionally will help things. But the vast majority of the time, the child on the Mac computer never needs to do anything, and the updates will just kind of seamlessly work as soon as the parent makes a change. So that's what that button is, and we can click it right here, and the app will make a request in the background to go and pull any updated information that it needs. So that's how you use a public keychain, and I'll take a moment now and show you how you might create your own personal keychain, because chances are you'll have some websites that your kid needs to get to that we don't have a public keychain for. So one of the things you might end up doing is just creating your own keychain from scratch and then adding keys to it. And I'll kind of walk you through what that looks like right here. So in order to create our own keychain, we can click Add Keychain. or actually I'll cancel out. This would be adding a keychain to the user. Let's go over to our keychain screen and we will create a keychain. So let's call this Susie's Keys. And once we create it, it's going to tell us, okay, well, you need to make at least one key in this keychain. So let's do that. When you pop up this dialog, it's going to ask you what type of key. And without getting too in depth, there's a lot of control and power kind of at your fingertips here. But essentially, we categorize all keys into two types. Website keys are sort of what they sound. They unlock a website like Khan Academy that your kid might be using in a browser. And a good percentage of your keys, probably the most common use case would be to create these website keys. But we also have another type of key called an app key. And that's for other narrowly focused specific applications that might need unrestricted access to the internet. So as opposed to unlocking a single website like this, imagine your kid needs to use the Zoom app to do a video conference, once a week for one of their online classes. Well, what we can do is we can grant just the Zoom app on your kid's Mac unrestricted access to the internet with a special app key, and then that specific app only, just the Zoom app, would sort of function as if Gertrude wasn't blocking them at all. And that'll allow them to kind of safely use one specific application. So that's the difference between these two types of keys. To keep things simple, we'll just start by showing you a website key. And we're going to imagine that our user our child wants to use the website howtotype.com. And so once this is entered, I can go ahead and click Create Key. And if we come over to our kid's user, I forgot one step. This won't work. We created a key, but now we need to give our user that key. So I went over to the user screen, and here's Susie. So we are going to click Add Keychain and choose Susie's Keys, which has now appeared up under Your Keychains. And we need to make sure to save the user. And then over here at the kid's computer, we are going to go to howtotype.com, and it loads. So that's how you create your own keychain and start adding your own keys to it. And that's something that you'll want to do at least once. Really, you're going to need at least a single keychain that you kind of control so that you can add keys to it whenever your kid needs something unblocked. And you don't need to have a whole bunch of them if you don't want to. Some people with their entire family will just make a single keychain if they're comfortable with all their kids having access to the same websites. But if you want to have different controls for different kids, you can have different keychains for different kids, or even organize them by classes and topics and things like that. And that allows you to, at certain times, give certain kids access to parts of the internet and not some of your other kids. So that's kind of the power and the flexibility of keychains. And you can sort of use it as little or as much as you want. You'll need, like I said, at least one keychain that you control, and you can have as many as you want or anywhere in between. The third way of unlocking the internet I want to show you might be the most important and the most common, because it's a little bit cumbersome to kind of have to go over to your phone or your computer and create those keys from scratch like I just showed a moment ago. A more common way to do it is to respond to what we call an unlock request. So to show you how that works, I need to kind of simulate what's going to happen really often with your kid as they are needing to use the internet and needing to use parts of the internet that you haven't yet unblocked. Let's pretend that your child needs to use the website artofproblemsolving.com. This is a online math and science program. Well, we don't have a key or a keychain that is unlocking this, so they can't get to it. Now, if they told you about this, you could go and create a key from scratch and add it to their keychain, and then they could try again. But Gertrude tries to make this easier by letting your kids sort of diagnose what's being blocked and proactively send you a request to unlock that. And here's how that works. One of these buttons I mentioned earlier says view network traffic, and if you click this, then you will see a live updating list of all the different network requests that Gertrude is blocking in the background. And it's important that your kids kind of know how to get to this screen and have a little bit of a sense how it works. So you're going to want to show this to them at one point and kind of say like, hey, when you need access to something, or if one of your teachers sends you a link to a website you need to use and you get blocked, you can just pull this up and you can find all the stuff that's getting blocked. And what you're seeing here, this big list of blocked stuff, is very normal. Computers are always making network requests in the background all the time, programs that are running on behalf of the system and stuff you don't even know about. It's very, very normal for this to be totally full of what looks like gobbledygook. There are a few ways that we try to make it easier for you to kind of figure out what you're interested in, because we don't need all this stuff unblocked in order to get access to art of problem solving. So I'll briefly kind of show you that there's this button here that you can click clear requests, and that just kind of says like, hey, give me a clean slate. Don't show me anything that has been blocked before this particular instant. And then the next thing that is pretty useful is if you click this filter button, it'll allow you to say, hey, I'm only interested in blocked requests that somehow match this little bit of text. So in this case, I'm using the Safari browser. So I'll type in Safari just to make sure we only see stuff from Safari. And then I'm going to shrink this window down just a little bit here. So now that I've got the request cleared and it filtered to Safari, I'm going to try to refresh this page again. And you'll see we have one request that came in right at the moment when I refreshed. So this kind of makes it easy to figure out exactly what needs to be unblocked. So once you've found the request, if you click on the red lock icon over here, you get to send an unlock request with an explanation. And so this might be your kid saying something like, hey, my teacher asked me to do this, something like that. And they can click submit. But before I do that, I kind of want to show you what makes this like really usable from the parent's perspective. And in order to do that, we're going to kind of go back over and put our parent admin hat on. And I want to show you that in the parent's web admin, there is a link for what we call their profile. This is kind of information about you as the parent. And in this screen, you can actually set up to get notifications for specific events that happen. And in order to do this, like for instance, you can get emails or text messages or Slack messages if you're a Slack user. And the way this kind of works is, if by default we allow you to basically get emails sent to whatever email address you signed up with. So we could create a notification down here that says, hey, send me an email when my user sends an unlock request. But if you want to get a text message, you can just click to create a new verified method, and you would put your phone number in here. And I'm not going to enter my real phone number on this video, but you would, I want to change this to getting a text. And you could click this send verification code. It would send you a one-time 6-digit code, and as long as you kind of prove that you own this phone number and have access to it, then you can come down here and add a notification, and you get the option to send a text message to that user. So I am going to actually pause the video real quick and put in my real text phone number, and we'll come back. Okay, so I went ahead and set up a text notification, and so we can kind of finish simulating this unlock request. So your kid isolates the request they need unblocked, and they leave you an explanation of why they need it, and they click submit. And once that's done, you get a text notification that they need something unlocked. Now, because I'm recording this on my computer, I can't exactly show you what the text looked like, but I'll go ahead and just click the address that gets sent to me in my text message. So off screen, I have my text messages pulled up, and I'm going to click on the notification that just came through, and we can see that we have the URL that Susie is requesting, and here's the comment she made to kind of help us understand why she needs this, and we get to choose whether to deny this or to accept it. So in this case, we'll accept, and we're going to have to add a key to a specific keychain. So we only have one keychain, so that's an easy choice. Gertrude is going to go ahead and kind of go through the process of creating a key that will unlock this request for you. So you don't really have to do any other work, but if you wanted to, you could go in here and fiddle with the settings and tweak it or change it, but it's right here basically just saying like, hey, in order to give them access to what they requested, we've already created a key. You just get a moment to review it and make sure you're comfortable with it. And then if you click submit, then their unlock request is accepted. And if this were kind of a real situation, your user would actually see a notification that pops up right up here in the right-hand side of their screen. But for some reason, something about the recording the screen seems to suppress those notifications, and I haven't figured out how that works. But you should be seeing a pop-up notification if you have that setting. And that's neat because, you know, it might take you a few minutes, or maybe don't have access to your computer for a moment, but at some later point in time when you get around to accepting or denying that request, they will know that you have replied. So once they've done that, they should be able to refresh, or if for some reason hasn't come through, they can click refresh rules, and sure enough, now they get Art of Problem Solving. So I did that kind of fast, but you may have noticed that when I first tried it, it didn't seem to work. And occasionally the connection isn't fast enough, or there's some other little hiccup in kind of the two-way communication between their computer and the app. And if that's the case, they can always, you know, use this refresh rules button. And so that's probably how you're going to create most of your keys, is not by kind of starting from scratch over on your own, but just by replying to these unlock requests, which makes it a lot easier. And we found that kids of all ages kind of get used to this concept of, you know, trying to go somewhere. Let's say we'll try to go to Apple and saying, oh, I can't get there. Pull up the network inspector or the network requests, find the right one, send a request out, you get notified, waiting for my text message to arrive. There it is. And here it is again. And this one we could accept if we want. We'll go ahead and briefly accept it. And come back over here. And if we refresh the screen, you'll see they have access to it now. So that is kind of the workflow for unlock requests. Next, I want to pause and kind of show you how monitoring or supervision works with Gertrude, because we've now been experimenting with this user for quite a while. And if you remember, when I first set up the Susie user, I'll go back to the user here. We turned on key logging and screenshots. And by the way, I want to show you that this is not something we do kind of in a creepy or slimy or secretive way. Down here at the bottom of the Gertrude screen, we're always informing explicitly your user that they are being watched and their keystrokes are being recorded. So this is not a secretive thing. In fact, we really want your users to know they're being watched. That's a big part of the safety, is that in addition to the internet being filtered, they also know that their parent can see what they're doing. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. There's a couple ways to kind of see how this works. I'm going to go to the dashboard, and if you're just kind of on the main screen of the web admin, you'll see that first of all, it's going to show you kind of like a picture of the most recent thing that your child was doing. And you can see right here that we're seeing a picture of this exact screen that we've got over here. We see a little kind of indication that Susie is online. And then we have this activity with 48 unreviewed items. And we can click that, and we'll see that for this day, we have all these items. And if we scroll down here, you'll just see kind of approximately every 30 seconds with some randomization built in, we get a screenshot of what they're working on. So all this is stuff you've seen me do in the course of this video. And this is a good example right here that I know I didn't do a ton of typing while I've been making this video, but when I do type, like when I put in the artofproblemsolving.com web address, that all gets captured and uploaded, and you're told, hey, this is from the application Safari, they typed this. And so the text that they type is sort of interleaved with the screenshots that are recorded, and this gives you just a really incredibly useful and accurate picture of everything they're doing online. And so you can see here's when we were unblocking Khan Academy, and here's when we were just getting started, and it's all there. And you can come into this screen and review this stuff at any time, hours later, days later. Each item, each screenshot and bit of text you can improve individually. Approve sort of means like, hey, there's nothing harmful in this, and I want to delete it. I don't want to be shown it again. And you can click one of them. That's usually not what we do, because it's more common that a parent who's reviewing this stuff would kind of, somewhat quickly scroll through, just kind of glancing if there's anything that's concerning. And when they finish either a chunk of 100 or get through an entire day, you'll see at the bottom we give a big button that says approve all, and if you click that, then all those get deleted at once. And if we go back to our dashboard, it'll say, hey, you've got nothing to review, and you're all caught up. And if you have multiple users, you'll see all their different sort of like feeds of screenshots and activity all kind of coming in here. And if it's just a really nice way to get a bird's eye view of what's happening, and really does kind of double down on the safety, because not only are we keeping them only in the parts of the internet that we specifically know are safe, but we're also able to see them. And then because of how Gertrude displays this, they always know that their activity is being recorded. And that kind of leads me to the final main feature I want to show off here, which is the ability to remotely suspend temporarily the filter. Maybe a good way to explain this feature is to describe kind of how it came about. I built Gertrude at first for my own kids and a few of my friends, and the internet filtering was kind of the initial main and only feature of it, and it was working great. But I found that with some of my kids, there were these scenarios that would pop up where for a short period of time they needed access to websites they don't normally go to. And now I could make keys for that, have them send unlock requests, get a whole bunch of stuff unlocked, but there were these times where they might go to a website for a few minutes because, say, they're doing an online call with their teacher, and their teacher is asking them, hey, click this link, let's go look at this together. I could unlock those things, but they would never go back to that website again. So it's kind of these bursts of unusual activity. And I realized that for those things, I would often have my kids just bring me their computer, and I would turn off the filter for a few minutes. And I would say, like my daughter Harriet had a class for a couple months where during the class, it was like a Zoom class, she needed to go visit other pages that her teacher was giving her. And so I just started turning off her filter for an hour each week. And I was comfortable doing that because I knew that I had these screenshots. And so I would kind of always wink at her and say, all right, filter's off, but remember, Gertrude's always watching you. And then she would bring me back the computer after an hour, and I'd turn the filter back on for her. And after a while of doing that, I realized that being able to monitor the screenshots and the keystrokes made it safe to temporarily turn off the filter. And so we kind of made that a first-class feature, and I will show you how that works. So what your user can also do, and this is sort of the third button that they can click here, is they can request to have the filter turned off. So they would do that by clicking disable filter temporarily. They give you an explanation like maybe I am doing a quiz. Oops. And they submit that. And once again, on your side, you get a text message or an email or a Slack. And you can't see that on my screen. So once the notification comes in and you click on it, you get taken to a screen that looks similar to when an unlock request is sent. And here we go. We have kind of a description that our user is requesting a suspension for 5 minutes. They can change that amount. I don't know if I clearly showed that, but if I come back here and click this screen again, they can pick all kinds of different amounts here, set a custom duration, and you'll see that. Now you don't have to give them what they ask for. You'll see that we kind of default it to what they ask. But you could change this and say, no, I'm only going to approve this for 3 minutes, or you can give it longer. And then you can add a comment if you want, or you can grant the request. So I'm going to go ahead and grant. And once again, if I wasn't screen recording here, the user would see a notification on their Mac computer, and they would also be able to see if they click the Gertrude icon. So we know it worked because it's showing that the internet filter is in this temporary suspended state. So that means that we can pull up Safari and we can go somewhere that they are not normally allowed to do. So maybe we could go to Google and we could search for goats. And all this activity, while they are temporarily not being filtered by the internet, not being blocked, is still being recorded. So suspending the filter doesn't stop the recording of the keystrokes and the screen. So we can actually kind of see that if we go over and drill into our requests. And as long as we've had one recently enough, yeah, sure enough, there you can see that this is me Googling for goats. And there's where I typed it. And so all this activity with the filter suspended is still safe. And when this runs out, so this is going to run out in 90 seconds, then they no longer have access. They can also, if they finish early, they can click resume, and then the filter goes back on. And so if they go somewhere else, you can tell that the suspension is over. One quick note is 60 seconds after a suspension ends, all web browsers get force quit by the Gertrude app, and we have a little more explanation about this in our documentation, but the basic reason is some kind of arcane technical stuff that basically means that if your kids were on a website during a filter suspension, there is a possibility that they would retain a small amount of access to that website after the suspension is over. And that's because of how computers work. They reuse the internet connections under the hood. And just to be totally safe, we actually force quit the browser, and that kind of terminates all those open connections. So that's a common theme with Gertrude, is we are going for maximum safety. And so you noticed right there, I didn't click or do anything, and the Safari browser went away. They get a notification kind of warning them that the browser is going to go away, and you'd be able to see that if I could get it to work on the screen recording. But that's kind of one more thing about how filter suspensions work. And that's really almost everything. And I guess the one last thing I'll show you here, just to be totally complete, is some of the other parts of the administration screen. So again, this is the one area that's for you as the parent, not for the kid. When you click it, you have to authenticate as an admin user. We've got the health check screen here. The two spots I want to briefly show you is there's this other screen called Actions that allows you to sort of do administrative actions For instance, you can literally stop the filter. This is different from suspending it. Normally you don't need to do this, but if you're gonna maybe uninstall or there's some sort of a technical problem, you can turn the filter off. You can do a manual suspension right from here as well. This is occasionally useful if you don't have your phone or you're literally sitting next to your kid and it's faster to just do it on their computer. As long as you authenticate, you can actually suspend their filter from here, just like responding to a notification. And there's a couple other options here that aren't really worth going over in great detail. This is the only place you can quit the app from, and if you try to quit this, it prompts you for a username and password again, and that's because your kid is not able to quit Gertrude. If they were, they could stop it from recording your screenshots and stuff like that. And finally, if you have a computer that both a parent and a kid uses, which is not that uncommon, maybe you just have one Mac laptop that you use and also your kid uses, then again, in the name of safety, Gertrude is sort of built in such a way that it always takes the safest possible course of action, and that means that it actually will block internet requests for the parent's admin user unless you explicitly tell it that user is safe and should be allowed unrestricted access. So this screen is only for people who are kind of dual using their computer, like a kid and a parent both use it. And if that's the case, you just need to kind of like one time come in here and say like, hey, this admin user, Jared, is exempt from filtering, and that will allow you to log in as that user and have unrestricted access to the internet. One thing to be really careful about when you make a user exempt, you have to make sure that there is a password on that user that the kid does not know, or else they could just, if they knew the password, they could just come up here and log themselves out and log in as you and then have unrestricted access to the internet. So that's it. I hope this was a really good, thorough explanation of kind of all the different pieces and parts of getting going with Gertrude. And if you have questions, let us know, and I hope you give it a shot. And good luck.